Hello and welcome to the Tabletop Team Podcast. I am your host, Joe, and with me again is my one co-host.
Yeah, coming from the future, it is morning time here, 6 hours ahead, so if there is what is the opposite of a delay? Like where I'm coming in early?
Marty, we have to go back. That's the entire opposite.
Yeah, we'll just play mine like
Marty.
6 seconds so soon. Yeah, it's Don Julian coming from Spain. Oh, I found out what the time zone is called here. They don't have cool names like we do in America, but it is called UMT+1.
Wow.
Not fun.
Losing points, Spain. Bad beer, bad wings.
I know, man.
A whole conversation that's not making it into the podcast.
I know.
So if you didn't listen to our last episode, scheduling is weird. Sadly, Mike cannot join us right now. We hope we can get him back soon. But right now, it just works out that I can record at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Don Julian over here can record from Spain at 7 a.m. So
no, 8:37. This is UMT+1.
Oh, +1. I'm sorry. I have the whole Rolodex of time zones right next to the D&D stuff.
Yeah.
This week we are talking about difficulty. That's right, how hard or easy things are in the world of tabletop gaming. Do you have anything you'd like to start with?
Yeah, I have a weird one that I think board games that can be easy but also can be difficult, and then I want to move later into some that are like just strictly easy and strictly difficult. But Scrabble. I mean, I could play this game, even if I didn't know many words. You can just be writing 3 to 4 letter words. But I don't know if you've ever played with someone that knows a bunch of weird words, and you're constantly going, dude, let's look this up, to the point where you're going, I don't want to play with you because you just gave me like a 7-letter word that has no vowels. So that's a game that I find can be incredibly easy and just furiously difficult.
I don't think I've ever actually played Scrabble. Maybe I played it like on a computer game version once.
That's helpful.
But I don't think I've ever actually played Scrabble with somebody before.
No, I've played with like 3 people before where like me and another person are just writing basic word like baked or road or something of 4 letters, maybe max 5, never hitting like double triples or double doubles or anything. And then there's like this one person that just knows all the words, or they write like 2-letter words. Oh, have you ever played Words with Friends?
I have played Words with Friends before.
Okay, so that's similar to Scrabble, but I feel like the ability to just play down random ass crap that isn't real, or that like you find out. Like, you ever hear of the word key? It's QI.
Sounds familiar.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be able to use it in a sentence, but that's a big, you're using the letter Q, and I think the letter I even gives you a couple extra points. And so using these kind of words, now it's like, okay, is it really made up or not?
Because like I know key as in like KI, which is like your spiritual energy. Obviously, it also goes into D&D, but it's like a real concept before D&D, so.
Yeah, so that's even another thing, is like knowing these kind of words, because you can just like bump up against some random I with a K and then get a bunch of points if it's in the right location.
Yeah, difficulty, was one thing I was thinking about while we were discussing this topic, was how, yes, the games themselves can be designed to be either extremely easy or extremely difficult, but another big factor is a lot of times the people you're playing with. You could have someone who's extremely clever and knows how, like Monopoly, for example, like you could have someone who just knows the right places to go to, the people who like bargain the hardest and don't budge an inch, make it very different compared to someone who's like me, who just does like the stupidest deals ever just because it's either funny or he's bored.
Yeah. Because I think that way about like Battleship. You can just place all your stuff right in a row to confuse it, or to confuse the other player, or scatter them all over the place. But if you have a player or an opponent that is really strategical about what they're doing, especially, and we talked about this on this podcast, Risk. You think you're just having an easy game, going across the map, and then all of a sudden you're getting pummeled by someone that's baiting you into continue to imperialize the world.
And you wiped out on turn 1 and never played again.
Screw this game. So there's a Chinese game that is supposed to be the most difficult game in the world. It's called Go. Now, I've never played this game, but I looked into it quite a bit. And what it is they're black and white tiles. And apparently this is like a super hard game that's been around for a couple thousand years. And it's all like numbers based and plan and objective based. It's almost like a strategical war style game from a couple thousand years ago that turned into tournaments. Now people have these Go tournaments, seeing how quickly they can beat this game. But the object is to like enclose tiles. You're on a grid board with these white and black tiles, and the scoring is really bizarre. If you don't know the scoring and how to score like this, I don't feel like is a game. Even me not having played it and trying to explain it right now, I feel like I'm just ranting. But it looks like such an incredibly difficult game. But it's been around for thousands of years, so there's got to be a very fun element to it. So that's another thing with like game difficulties is, when does a game become too difficult that it's not fun? Or when is the fun increased because it's so difficult?
I mean, I don't really have an answer. I could assume maybe it's like on a really weird bell curve.
Yeah, I guess that's probably true.
The idea where higher up, the more enjoyable, and the farther across is more difficult, and it'll just go, and then eventually
I love it.
I think it wouldn't even like dip down like maybe a little bit, just because there's certain people who like that.
Yeah,
but I think it would more like flat drop at a certain point, and then maybe at a certain point it would just climb back up, where it's like the difficulty is obviously in the game. That was a stupid sentence I just said. Sorry, continue.
No, it's perfect. So like with Carcassonne, Carcassonne is not difficult to play. But then like what we were talking about earlier, if you have an opponent that really knows how to lay out some of those cities, lay out some, like even start collecting tokens to just putting themselves in a better position to win, that's when it starts getting more difficult. But yeah, I guess with a lot of games, we talked about games of chance before, random number generating. That can really throw a game that could be easy into something really, really difficult, because you're constantly looking for one card that could help you win, and then you never get it.
Yeah. And then, another game that could be really difficult is like Road Bingo.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like different things that we don't always talk about. And that's definitely that's got to be a game a lot of people are familiar with. And it's a game still, but that could be like so wildly easy or hard for you.
How do you guys play? Because I feel like maybe I play a different game that we don't call Road Bingo, where we go with maybe your name or the alphabet, and you have to find a sign with that.
When I was really young, we used to go to Florida every year, and we would drive from New York to Florida, usually stop about halfway.
Holy cow.
And very early on, my mom bought actual Road Bingo cards with like the little sliders on them.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing. I was very strange as a child and did not need to actually play the game Road Bingo. I just liked the little slider things on there. And that would entertain me for hours on end somehow.
That was easy mode for you. It's like, I'm not even going to actually look for these things. I'm just really enjoying this slider.
I didn't even know it was bingo. I just liked to play with the sliders. I don't know why. They were like see-through red sliders. But yeah, that's what I do know. We had those. I probably played it at some point because, going back and forth, that's hundreds of hours, hundreds of miles back and forth and stuff. But of course, there's always the more extreme license plate game where the only way to win is if you find the Hawaiian license plate.
Oh God, that's not a real thing. I don't even know if Hawaii exists.
Probably doesn't.
Have you ever been there?
No, I wish.
Right? So there's two games that I can think of that I feel like there's an easy mode and a hard mode. And that's checkers and chess. I feel like most people know how to play checkers, and even if you have a pretty skilled opponent, you probably still have a fair chance of winning, or at least doing well in it. But with chess, I mean, if you don't know how the pieces work, someone that does know how to do that, even if someone just has the bare basics, can just run you over if all you know is how those pieces move.
Yeah.
So that's a really difficult and easy game to play. Do they have tabletop simulator checkers? We should do that one.
In my experience with checkers, it's come down to this. It's either somebody makes a big mistake and they lose, or whoever goes second wins. And that's because who goes first has moved their pieces out farther than the other player has.
Well, I think it comes to whoever takes their back row off of the player or the pieces. Because once you move that back row, well, now that person can get a king and it's over. That guy's going anywhere he wants. So yeah, I think that it's whoever moves their back row first, which would have to, if all moves equal, I assume it would be second player that does that.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about chess is like if you're the white player, you get to go first, which I'm not a chess expert by any means, so I don't know if that's an advantage or disadvantage. But then black going second, I feel like you're trailing behind, but at the very least you get to see, oh, this is how they're setting up. This is how they're progressing through the game.
Exactly. So one game that I think is kind of interesting, and this is kind of going back onto my earlier topic about like the person you're playing with, but that's the game Snake Oil. Have you ever played Snake Oil?
Oh, no. What is this?
You will freaking love this game.
Nice.
There's a deck of cards handed out, and each card has 2 words on them. You know, think of the concept of like Cards Against Humanity, but basically infinite replayability. So somebody draws a card and they has a career on it, and you say, so like a career might be like executioner or president or teacher. So then everybody else goes around and they take 2 words on their cards, put them together, and they have to try and pitch that person an item that they're selling.
Oh, I do love this game so far.
You could have things like, oh, you're a gravedigger? Well, what I got for you is the murder shovel. No, it was fashion shovel. That was the joke one of our groups made, was the fashion shovel.
Wow.
You will look the best digging up those bodies. And so it's like everybody's got to sell this item, and whoever gives the best item, you know, Cards Against Humanity rules, either who makes you laugh the hardest or sells you the most relevant item, gives you the card, and that's a point to you.
This jewel-encrusted shovel with the action blade at the back end. That sounds like a really fun thing because it's like a like an improv game. Oh, ace.
The difficulty in that comes in like, you know, sometimes somebody could just be on fire with ideas.
Right.
Other times people can be boring with ideas. Sometimes everybody has cards that just suck, and it is part of the, you know, that's part of the game. It's like Cards Against Humanity. I just keep using that one as an example because that's something almost everybody knows now. But yeah, you could get a bad hand and be like, well, I just have the white rock. How does that help? I don't know, man. These are my throwaway
Sick
cards.
of green rocks? Try white rock. You can paint it any color you want. So going down that same vein of creativity, like Pictionary. I don't know if you ever played this, but you have to draw the item that, or the word or something without, you know, and so if you're suck at drawing like I do, you're going to be like, I think it was The Office where Michael Scott had like windmill, or maybe it's Community. And like it was a windmill, but it looked like a swastika, and they just keep circling it over and over. And it's like they keep guessing, and he just keeps circling. It's like, stop circling it, draw more stuff. I gotta look that clip up so I can show you later and future joke and add it to the podcast. Wait a minute, so I'm future right now. Maybe I'm adding it to the podcast.
So one thing I was going to bring up, and this is a little bit off topic, but almost on topic for our channel, is video game board games. And I mean, even going as simple as saying playing something like Monopoly on a computer, or playing Game of Life or something like that. And you can set difficulties for the AI. And it's always weird when you think about that, because sometimes it's just they make the right decision, and other times it literally just lets them cheat.
Oh, yeah.
Like there are some games where it's like, oh, you set the AI to a hard difficulty. Oh, they just roll exactly what they need every single time, or they just happen to have more resources than you or something like that.
That's what I'd like to hit on is it sounds like you're always playing on those upper echelons of difficulties where you're like, yeah, man, they're not helping me out at all. Real player. See, I'm always on like easy, maybe medium, unless there's like ultra easy and then easy. And so I just am, I'm always playing against these guys that are just making dumb decisions. Like, why did you do that? Like, that's even for me at this level, I wouldn't have made that poor decision. And then you're just winning. I used to have a Monopoly for iPad where you could like sit it down. It was almost like a board. You know, you could have it auction off the properties. And just to make it go quicker, you know, you just buy it for $1. And the easy AIs would never buy it for $1. But if you had a hard one, they'd be like, I'll buy it for like 4 times what it's worth. Like, this is not going to be the easiest for you. I think we talked about this on the podcast too.
Oh, probably. We're like 10 episodes deep and we've already repeated everything.
I'm going to start sending in questions for us. It's like, can you guys talk about anything else?
Please. You guys suck. Why do I listen to you? Don Julian.
This is the worst show ever. But yeah, no. So the changing the difficulty on some of those things, because I think even like a normal computer, it like how is it computing, simple algorithms versus more complex one? I think that they can just be like, no, we're just gonna make this thing mess up on purpose all the time, or we're gonna make this thing never mess up.
As you say that does remind me of one thing, and I don't know how true this is, but I heard somewhere, at least for some things, what the difficulty is it'll be like, depending on how hard you make it, depends on how many times the computer runs the idea of what to play.
Oh, wow.
So like easy would be like, run this 10 times and choose the best one. And because it's 10 random times, it'll be like, okay, this is probably the best one. Doesn't mean it's great, but it's the best one I can think of in that 10 times you've given me.
Right. And I think that's how the robot apocalypse starts, you know. Are we on easy mode or are we on hard
Just
mode?
One hard mode game of Risk away from the apocalypse war.
It reminds me of The Edge of Tomorrow, not to get too far off topic, but do you ever see that movie with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt, I think it is, Jim Halpert's real wife? Yeah, so they
Good
just
movie, hate the ending.
Yeah, I heard they were making a second one. So
yeah,
but I think it's a repeat of the first, so who knows? But no, so
it's the exact same movie.
So that's kind of what the AI was doing, was going back over and over and over all their moves.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to some tabletop news. This week's going to be brief because I don't know when this episode's going to come out, and I figured this would be some kind of fun news we could share now. So recently I've been introduced to these things based on an ad on my Facebook called Dragonite Dice. There will be a link in the description, and I highly recommend you check them out because they are these badass dice that look like they just have a dragon eyeball in the middle of them.
Yeah, they're pretty cool looking. I think it'd be awesome because if you roll a 20, you get like that. Those 3 triangles almost looks like the Triforce thing if you combine them. But yeah, so they have those eyes. That'd be sweet to roll. It'd be like, dude, dragon eyes.
Yeah, the eye is the highest value of the die based on what all these look like. And they just look really sweet. You definitely deserve to at least go and look at them. It's going to be a Kickstarter, and they have more sharp edges and round edges. I really like the sharp edges personally.
Okay, this is what I was going to ask you earlier when we were checking this out. Is does the sharp edges or the round edges impact the die rolls in any way?
I have no clue. Let's Google it real quick. That sounds fun to talk about on the show.
And I do like that they're not actually called sharp or round edge finish. They're called legendary cut for the round, traditional smooth edge, or regal cut, elegant, diamond cut, crystal sharp finish. I wish we had a promotional code for this. I'm going to just make one up. This won't work, but you can put in the tabletop team at checkout and get 0% off. It'll actually probably give you an error message.
The CIA may show up at your house, actually, so I really don't.
CIA at this house?
Now, this is the very first result I got from Googling this. It led me to a Reddit article. Somebody was asking, why are dice with sharp edges and corners considered more random, quote unquote, than dice with rounded edges and corners?
Interesting.
And the top answer and this is literally just the first answer, and we're not diving any more deeper than this, is the act of rounding the dice usually means they've been tumbled to remove the sharp edges. There's no way to make sure all the edges are worn evenly or all the faces are equal. And then there's a follow-up saying, however, larger dice with sharp edges don't roll sufficiently well over short distances used at an RPG table to properly randomize. So it's kind of up to a certain point. I think that's a pretty good answer, in my opinion.
Oh, man. Okay.
It sounds right.
Okay. That was what I was going to say, is that I know nothing about it. You could have been reading off a Not Safe for Work subreddit. This isn't a really...
I mean, I was. But...
yeah, this is just a Gone Wild post that went off topic. That makes a lot of sense, though, because, like, how do they make sure every edge is rounded off? I'd like to... you know what? I'm about to call Dragonite up and be like, dude, you're freaking legendary cut. How legendary is it?
So just real quick, these dice, there's 5 colors. They're supposed to be the different dragons: red, blue, green, black, and white. And then if you sign up for the Kickstarter, which there is no date on it, which is why I may be able to get this out beforehand, but no promises. I'll leave a note in the comments if it's already out or not. But they say anyone who backs it in the first 48 hours gets a Goddess of Dragons D20, which you can only see on the mobile version of the site for some reason.
Very odd.
It's this very cool eye with like all these different colors in it. I highly recommend you check it out, even if you don't buy a set of dice. They look really cool. I'm probably going to be dropping $200 to get one of each color.
Wait, how much are they?
Dude, I don't know, but dice are expensive.
Yeah.
The cooler the dice, the more expensive it is.
Because I will say that they come in 5 different colors: red, green, blue, and then there's like black with purple, and then white with a little bit of purple. And every one of them look really badass, other than the green and blue ones, which, I mean, they still look cool, but just not nearly as cool as the other colors. But maybe that's just my preference.
Yeah, if I were to get one color, it'd be the black ones. But they do all look pretty awesome, and I'd love to have a full set of each color, to be honest.
Well, and I will say that one that's only on mobile version, which you had to show me a picture of, I was on the computer, that one probably is the most cool looking one. That one looks really interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, so go check those out. Dragon Dice, blessedinnovations.com. Anyways, let's move on to D&D. D&D has a very important thing with challenge called challenge rating. Now, I think me and Mike have poo-pooed it on the podcast before because it is just not good. It is not a good system to balance the game. Especially, like, the more players you have, the more broken it gets.
Yeah, challenge rating is something that I don't really understand fully, because even, like, when you guys have explained it to me, I always am not sure how it is. So let me ask you this. If something has a challenge rating of 5, you're DMing, obviously, and then you have me and 2 other people, what level do we need to be at for a challenge rating of 5 to not be easy, but not be TPK? Like something that would actually be like, you know, a session.
The easiest thing to say, because you gave me a really difficult situation that I got to think about for a moment. We'll keep your base idea. It's a challenge rating 5 monster. That means it should be a average level challenge for a party of 4 level 5 adventurers.
Okay, so 4 level 5 should be able to do a 5.
Yes, that's the idea. The thing is, and a lot of DMs agree, is especially once you get to larger groups, it doesn't matter what you have or what level they have. You need to make that challenge deadly. Because that's the thing is, it's like, it quickly, the way this challenge rating works, it's like easy, medium, normal, hard, challenging, and deadly, I think. And it very quickly goes to deadly. Like, even if you said like a challenge rating 6 against 4 level 5 players, I'm pretty sure the scale says deadly. So they definitely need to make a more diverse scale, which I don't think they're ever going to do. That's the problem with balancing, right? And then it also comes down to the type of characters you have and, you know, the creature you use. And some creatures are scaled very differently. For example, I believe a Mummy Lord is challenge rating 3. And it's got this thing called Mummy Rot, which is like super deadly. Like that is a TPK there, even if you have a party of like level 10 adventurers against a challenge rating 3 monster.
And what is that special ability do?
I'm looking up exactly what it is because I don't want to misquote it. Okay, so not even a mummy lord. A standard mummy, challenge rating 3, has an ability called Rotting Fist. Melee weapon attack +5 to hit, reach 5. On a hit, it's 2d6 plus 3 bludgeoning damage plus 3d6 necrotic damage.
Holy cow.
Against a level 3, like if you did that against a level 3 party, that could right there knock somebody out if they had low enough health.
Well, yeah, because that's a lot of dice to roll. Are you rolling like 5 of them or 6 of them?
That's 5d6 plus 3. And then if the target is a creature, which if you're going against your PCs, they probably are, it must succeed on a DC 12 Constitution saving throw or be cursed with mummy rot. The cursed target can't regain hit points, and its hit point maximum decreases by 3d6 every 24 hours that elapse. The curse reduces the target's hit point maximum to 0. The target dies, and his body turns to dust. The curse lasts until a remove curse spell or other magic.
Holy cow. Okay, so that is so if we had 4 level 3 players,
they're dead.
Yeah, they each get hit with this thing within 24 hours, even if they survive the fight and do not have like what would cure that? Cure wounds, and then it
says remove curse. And remove curse is a level 3 spell. If you are level 3, you do not have that spell available to you.
Yeah, you're about to go off wandering, and you got 24 hours to find someone.
Yeah.
Because you can't even heal. You can't even take a long rest? Nothing?
Nope. Can't do it. It says you cannot regain hit points.
Oh, that sucks so bad.
Yeah. And I mean, dude, picture that for like even a level 5 party who could potentially have a remove curse. More than likely, there's only going to be 1, maybe 2 people who have that spell, and it's like pure luck if they have it stocked, right? Like if they even took the spell.
Right.
Now, hypothetically, so a cleric, a warlock, and a wizard could have it at that level. A Eldritch Knight and an Arcane Trickster can learn it, and a Divine Soul Sorcerer could also have it. But like at level 5, that is still extremely deadly. Going up even farther, like that thing hits 5d6 plus 2. Hold on, let me take a look at the rest of its stats. It's just the mummy is a perfect example of why challenge rating doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's got 11 armor class, which is very low, but it has 58 hit points.
And with a party that are challenge rating or that are all level 3, I mean, your hit points aren't that high. Maybe like a little bit less than 20.
Yeah, it depends. Like if you have a bunch of casters,
I guess you could have someone up to 40, maybe.
It depends because it's like you either have a bunch of D6s, a bunch of D8s, a bunch of D10s, or the one class that has a D12. So if you have a barbarian, they might be fine, but
they're all barbarians. Yeah, but then if he's a barbarian, he's not going to be a caster as well.
And then get this. So it has a thing called Dreadful Glare. Targets one creature within 60 feet of it. If the target can see the mummy, it must succeed on a DC 11. Not super high, but still not great.
Yeah.
At level 3, not everybody can make that easily. Wisdom saving throw against the magic or become frightened until the end of the mummy's next turn. However, if the target fails the saving throw by 5 or more, it is also paralyzed.
Ooh.
Which means the mummy has advantage on the attacks against that person.
Okay, so what was the attack called? Mummy's Wrap?
Rotting Fist is the initial
Rotting
attack.
Fist. Okay, and so, yeah, what is the plus to hit on that one?
It's +5.
Oh, man. So he's got advantage. I mean, if he's rolling anything, I mean, most likely your AC isn't crazy high at level 3 anyways.
Unless if you have, like, a really nice DM who's just like, yeah, you can have whatever armor and shields you want.
I know. I think I had like a 20 right off the bat recently when we were playing that one thing. That was pretty sweet. Okay, so like another thing is like DC checks. Since I'm not a DM, I don't know how this works always. So I'm always curious of like, oh man, like I got to roll something. Are you creating those DC checks on the fly, or are there a lot of like pre-made DC checks?
Well, for creatures and monsters, there's almost always pre-made checks. Starting at 5 and going up by increments of 5, setting a DC is very easy, medium, hard, very hard, and a DC 30 is nearly impossible.
DC 30. So you got to have a +10 and get a 20, or would you consider a nat 20 to succeed on a DC 30?
Depends on the DM. Joe likes to say a nat 20 is an auto success no matter what, unless if I tell you otherwise. In rare cases, I have gone, this is so nearly impossible. You have disadvantage, and so you need to roll 2 nat 20s for this to work.
Oh,
Like, that is like how
that
there's
never
very
happens.
rare times where I'll be like, look, even a nat 20 won't get you this. Like that. And those are like the really out there questions that I get from some people.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of DMs, myself, Brennan Lee Mulligan, I think Matt Mercer usually goes, a nat 20 is an auto success and usually needs to be honored. Especially because I'm taking this straight from Brennan Lee Mulligan. I don't know if you know who that is.
I don't, but what podcast or what doesn't he?
He does Dimension 20 with the College Humor guys.
Yes, okay, I
He
did know
is
that.
a guy I really look up. You know, I don't want to be his exact style. I believe in my own style versus everyone else's. But I definitely try to take a lot of aspects from how he DMs and put it into my own practice.
Yeah.
He said on a talk thing he does where it was like, you're rolling a lot of times, and yes, it's a 5% chance on a die, 1 out of 20. They're not rare. It's when you least expect it or most need it is when it is rare. And it's, you know, those are the sucker punches. Those are the ones where it's like somebody goes, if I roll a nat 20, can I come back to life? Like, even after you've made all your death saves, you can go, yeah, sure, why not? You know, 1 out of 20 chance what's is gonna, they roll that nat 20. It's like, holy shit, now, like, what? Now I gotta honor this.
I gotta say, man, I hate when I'm rolling and I get like 3 nat 20s in a row, and it's like, we'll be at the bar. It's like, hey, what's on the menu? You're like, I don't know, roll. Freaking 20. Oh, dude, this place has everything. Oh, sweet. Okay, so I want to have this thing. Okay, roll 20. Oh man, this is the most delicious thing ever. And then we're in combat. Okay, swing a 1. Okay, your sword is stuck in this dude. I'm like, what? Dude, I was at dinner rolling nat 20s.
That's the other thing too, is I'm very harsh with my nat ones. I use the fumble table. I use like an app that has some really fun ones for all types of attacks and stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of DMs aren't like, they don't, you know, Brendan Lee Mulligan doesn't treat natural ones as like critical failures unless if it's like it would go really well with the story. Me, it's like, oh, you swing your sword and then I hit the thing and it goes, you drop your sword and it gets kicked 30 feet away from you. More often than not, it happens to me while I'm playing a bad guy and I get really upset, and it's more funny that way. But yeah, I mean, it's very different from DM to DM. Rules as written, let me go back to your original question, though, about the nat 20 thing. Is rules as written, a nat 20 is not an auto success on skill checks. Most of the time, a DM will probably set a DC at around 20 or 25 for like those really challenging
so
things.
Here's a question I have about like changing that difficulty, because I don't know how this would work or if this stacks. Okay, so let's say we have like 2 clerics and a bard, and then we have a fighter that is going to go attack this thing, and you're like, all right, man, it's like a DC 30. One of the clerics puts on him, I think it's bless, or they get a +4 to a check, and then so they both do that.
Yeah, bless adds a D4.
All right, so 2 of those, and then a bardic inspiration.
That, if you're talking about attacking somebody, that is more of an AC thing, which is usually like what is set for each creature.
Oh, right.
But it's a similar concept.
I guess
still.
very similar.
And I mean, what you're going with is still not
Yeah.
like wrong. Like, if I don't know if bless stacks. That's a good question.
That's why I said 2 different clerics, not just one sitting there blessing the same dude over and over.
Okay, 2 instances of the same spell don't stack with each other. But I mean, I guess you could do bless. You could have a cleric do guidance, which is 2 separate spells, and same thing, you roll a D4 and add it. And then you could have a bard give you bardic inspiration.
Yeah.
And then you have a mastermind rogue gives you the bonus help action from 30 feet away. That fighter's got advantage plus all the help in the world to hit something. A minimum of a +3 to his attack. That's like the most unlucky fighter if he just rolls 3 1s on those dice.
All right, so that's where we're at with like this challenge rating. Is that this is how much extra we need to like get this, unless you already have like incredible stats. I'm talking about just like average players.
Yeah.
How often are average players coming in contact with like something that's a DC 30? How often does that happen? Because I don't feel like I ever have. If I did, I didn't know.
It really depends on the party and what they're going up against and how they're handling the world. Say somebody in my Barwalk campaign's like, I want to know how to disable the Titan that's about to destroy us all. That's the big bad. They know it right from the beginning. That would be, in my opinion, like a DC 30. If they got a nat 20, let me take a step back. I'd be like, okay, that would either be like a history, a religion, or an intelligence check. And they'd be like, okay, here's what I got, here's what I got, here's what I got. And be like, okay, there's absolutely no way you can beat a 30 with that. If you roll, and then I would be like, if you roll a nat 20, I will give you a hint to this question. In Dimension 20, for example, Emily Axford plays a bard called Fig, who has like a plus 14 to persuasion. I can't remember exactly how they got up to that. I think they had a magic item that helped boost things too, but still, it was like a plus 14. And so it's like, at a certain moment, Brendan is like, I need you to roll quadruple disadvantage. And she rolled 4d20, and like, she's like, I got a 17. And he's like, how'd you get a 17 while rolling 4d20 and taking the lowest? And she's like, I'm a bard, bitch. That's my shit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Okay, so kind of speaking in the same vein, have you ever had something you wanted to happen as a DM and you just set the DC super low and your party still failed? And you're like, what the heck, guys? I made this so easy for you.
How deep of a cut do you want me to bring?
I don't know, man.
This would involve you.
Oh, all right. Yeah, no. Okay, if this is it, then go ahead.
Okay, here's where the DC was so low, was with a little shithead dwarf named Flint. Woke up in the past and met his dad, who died before he was born, and I wanted to give him his super badass cleric armor that I was going to give him, and he's like, no, man, I don't want to be here. I want to go find my boyfriend Elf. And I'm like, listen, man, there's demons everywhere. There's devils. You can't go anywhere you got to help these guys, and then you can go. And you're like, fine. I'm like, you gotta roll to like figure this out, and you're like, I roll and you get like a 5 or something. I'm like, you really shouldn't be going, man. Now Joe railroaded the shit out of that scenario, but that was still like a moment where I was like, I set it up. You had like this hammer of one god and the shield of another god. The idea was you bang them together and you get this massive suit of dwarf cleric armor. And I was like so excited to give that to you. And you're just like, I don't want to be here.
And I do remember that he didn't know how to activate it. And you just were like, all right, hey, do this. Like, you're only so bad.
It was so bad because literally the way I set it up, and again, you know, this was young Joe, I've learned from now, but like the idea was you're supposed to be like following in your father's foot. Flint was supposed to be following in his father's footsteps. So like his father has the same weapon and shield, and he like bangs them together and he gets this badass armor, and Flint's like, how do I do that? And I'm like, I just told you, literally told you. Roll a d20, I guess.
Were you paying attention? So what about the other way around, where you had something that was so challenging and you were like, there's no way anyone's going to get this, and then you had to follow through with it?
Worst case scenario was last week, actually, during Murica. I did a whole bunch of lore drops, and on top of that, the party also had recently gotten an intern familiar, specifically Maynard, the wizard. Their first intern, Bart, died on the first round of his first turn in combat because he had commoner stats. So he had 4 HP and took 10 damage, so he instantly died.
Oh, no. Wait, they just got an intern and he died? Did they get a new one?
Yeah, so the next day, a new intern shows up. As a DM, I like to have an NPC with the party so I can like voice some basic things that they might not catch. Because, for example, like they were like, man, what do we do about this town? These people aren't good. And like, as Bart, I was like, bosses, you have evidence against this town doing extremely illegal and bad things. You could just bring this to the cops. So the next day they wake up and there's this elderly 90-year-old woman called Rose who's an intern. So that's the preamble for this. I gave the players a bunch of dreams to help build out their lore, and one of them, Nexibus, who is a tiefling. His story is he was human at one point, died, and then a god brought him back as a tiefling by accident because his patron, Nana Sin, we have made as like an elderly grandma. Since she's millions of years old, she like I think this is what you look like. She gave him a massive quest to find her lost cat to get his memories back.
Wow.
So they got the intern at the town, they got this information at the town, and they're riding back to like their home base to report on their job well done. Nexibus, who is Mike's character, and with this quest, turns to Rose and says, "Do you know anything about this cat?" Joe's like, "She probably doesn't know anything, but I'll roll." Rolled, got a nat 20. I was so pissed because I critted on myself and was like, fuck, I don't want to give them this lore dump I was saving for later, but I guess I have to.
Right.
And so I went on and explained about the theory of this pocket dimension on Earth that I didn't really want to go into yet because I was still kind of working on it, but it was definitely something I was going to reveal soon to them. I was like, guess I'm dropping this now.
Yeah. Like, Rose, how do you know all that? I just do. I read a book once.
Well, that's what it was. She's an intern. She's like, I've studied this stuff. You kind of go into a whole thing of deities and patrons, and you find one thing that interests you, and you just kind of go down this rabbit hole.
No, that's fun. Yeah, so challenge ratings can be a lot of fun. It can be difficult. It can be easy for some things. But yeah, the main ones are like AC and DC, and then creature or challenge rating CR. So those are the three. Are there any other ones in D&D that kind of make the challenge a little bit more?
The only thing that could make things more challenging is when you have boss creatures such as liches or beholders, dragons. Almost all of the big ones have an additional thing called a layer, which adds layer actions to a fight, which usually goes off at initiative 20. And those specifically do say on there, like, you know, having this brings their DC up. I think it's pretty one-to-one usually. I think adding a layer just increases their difficulty by 1. But it's really interesting when you try to homebrew layer actions, which I have done a lot in Murica and such, just to add like more flavor to it. And it's like, how do you make this in a creature thing and be like, it has no hit points or anything, but it's still an entity that's causing trouble?
Yeah, I find layer actions to be quite fun. Was the one that was in that spaceship tree thing where these slugs would fall from the ground and then there'd be a random magic? Was that do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, the Flatworms monster has an innate ability to fling leeches at people. They do a D4 of psychic damage if they hit, and then they do a wild magic surge. Joe loves wild magic so much. Can it be very effective? Yes, but because of that wild magic, it's like this can either do jack shit or like TPK in one round. And the Flatworms monster had a whole lot more cooler stuff to do. So I decided to make it so the layer action is once per round. A leech would randomly choose somebody, fall, and then trigger. I think I don't know if I did the psychic damage or kept it. I can't remember. But I definitely did the wild magic stuff when it hit, and that was really fun.
Yeah, I feel like that adds a lot of spice to the I always like layer actions, even though they're not beneficial. Because I remember in the other campaign we did, that long one, there was some layer action and some fight that, because we had so many people, the boss had an action. I think that there was 2 minions with him. There was our party and then another person. You almost stop remembering that there is a layer action. And so you're like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, and the earth shakes, a thing falls. It's like, oh my God, it totally ruined so you almost have to constantly be prepared for something random to happen. I like that. I think that makes a big difference in
kind of reminds me of my poor memory with legendary actions. I'll do like pretty good for like the first round, maybe with legendary actions. And then I just fully forget them.
What are legendary actions?
A legendary action is usually a boss creature's ability to do some sort of predefined action in between other people's turns when it's not their turn in the initiative. If done properly, it's why one creature can take on a group of 4 party and it still be, oh, this is a fair fight, because they can like move or cast a spell or do a full attack in between their normal initiative, which is very deadly. But a lot of times I forget about it and it kind of screws me over.
Can they do a legendary action once per round or in between literally every action?
I don't know all of them. Tiamat, for example, might be different because that's, you know, a challenge rating 30. But like most creatures that can do legendary actions have basically 3 legendary action points, and then certain skills cost more points. So like a lot of creatures have like the I can move without taking an opportunity attack. That's 1 point. I can do a single attack. That's 1 point. I can cast a cantrip. That is 1 point. But then it's like, oh, I can cast this like 3rd level spell. That would be like 2 points. And then there's things where it's like, oh, I can do this massive area effect thing that is like the equivalent of like a 5th or 6th level spell. That would be all 3 points.
Yeah.
So if you're playing on a map, especially, it's like, are the players positioned properly to like do something like that? Or would it be more beneficial if I just attack this guy and then, you know, use all my legendary actions to attack this one person or move away because the barbarian's up close in my face hitting me?
That's something I want to do. I want to play a barbarian, see how difficult that is. That's another thing about D&D that makes things difficult is the character you play. I know that as a cleric, starting off that as a new player was pretty difficult trying to figure out what spells match. But then I played as I played as a paladin recently, and that seemed quite a bit more simple compared to a cleric and more fun for sure. And then I imagine a fighter, it's just, hey, let's go hit things.
Really depends. Like, that's the thing is, you could be a simple champion fighter where it's like, yes, I hit things and I hit things good. But then Battlemaster fighters are amazing. They have like 20 different maneuvers or something they can choose from. Oh, wow. And they can be pretty situational sometimes. Like a goading strike is you hit a creature. If they fail the check, they have disadvantage attacking anyone except you. There's one skill that you swap places with someone of your choice. Like if you're like right next to them, you can like swap places, and then you can give them or yourself a D8's worth of AC for the next round.
Oh, wow.
And they get crazy. Then there's like the Eldritch Knights. They learn spells and stuff.
Wait, a fighter learns spells?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And then, I haven't even read into it, but there's like the Psychic Knights. There's like the whole Psychic subclass section. So they have their whole thing. I don't know if it's the Rune or the Giant Fighter, but like basically you have runes and they all do different things. Like a fighter can be very interesting if done properly. But then, of course, there's cookie cutter. I'm going to be a champion, great weapon fighting, great weapon master human. My name's Jeff.
That's my next player character is a Jeff the champion.
Well, yeah, I mean, like if you've never played a champion fighter, then yeah, go ahead. Like, see what it's like to create on a 19 or 20. That definitely adds to things. If that's all you play, then it's like mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Calling you out, Jeff. Love you, buddy, but calling you out.
All of my characters will be Jeff from now on.
He plays a barbarian, and he plays it so well. Like, it took him a little bit to learn, but he plays it so well now.
I just love the name barbarian.
Yeah, he wanted to be a bard for the horniness and a barbarian for the rage aspect. And what he does is he does really well, because a lot of the fights I do, I like telegraph them. You guys know you're going into a fight. So what he does is he's like, okay, we have a minute. I'm going to give my bardic inspirations out. Everybody has a bardic inspiration now before we fight. He goes into a fight. He rages. He fights and fights until the enemy's dead. When the enemy's dead, he comes out of his rage and he's like, all right, healing time. That's the kind of character he plays. There's other ways to play a barbarian, but that is a phenomenal way to do it, and I really appreciate how far he's come. I
want to do some character sessions for the podcast, because some memes I always see about bards, and I want to say tieflings maybe, and like some other characters, they're super horny all the time. Is that like a player thing, or like, because I can't imagine coming to a D&D session like, hey man, I'm gonna make out with all these people you keep creating for me.
I mean, well, the idea behind the bard is because, at least ideally built, they have a high charisma, high persuasion and performance, and they're just supposed to be like charming seducers. It's just like a stereotype that goes with it.
Oh yeah.
It actually falls under warlocks too a lot. Sorcerers and paladins are also charisma. There's a lot of charisma casters in 5e.
Or maybe that's what I was talking about.
Sorcerers and paladins are also charisma casters, but they're not normally as horny. But bards and warlocks tend to be there. And a lot of times a tiefling ends up with a warlock because a tiefling is already like a half devil. Like they already have like a devil blood in them. So it's like, oh, it just makes sense for that I have a patron that gives me superpowers. But I mean, you don't have to be. It's just how people play. I mean, heck,
my head just went through a whole rabbit hole.
In that same party, we have another bard. We have two bards. Bernard is Jeff's character. He plays very hornily. But then there's Lugos, Liz's character, who is a half-elf bard. And they're a little flirty, but they are just kind of like, I just want to play music and be an adventurer. Like, that's just who they are.
I played a bard with that lead triangle. I don't think that he was horny.
That was an amazing character. He was my favorite character. Just like the idea, you go and you're like, so yeah, I have this performer feature where, when I play at an inn, I get to stay and eat for free. And the idea was you went up to the stage and went, dink, dink. And the bartender comes up and he's like, listen, you could have the room and the food, just stop playing.
It was like the anti-bard.
Yeah, that would definitely be fun to like dive into classes and stuff. But I think for every episode where we do a specific like D&D thing, we need to counterbalance it with a specific tabletop thing, which I think means we could just do like class reviews and board game reviews.
Oh, yeah.
If people are interested in that, let us know.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
We've been going for quite a while, so I think it's time to wrap it up. You got anything you want to plug, man?
No, everything's plugged in today, so still working on digital plugs, I guess.
If we get famous, you are not allowed to get a Twitter.
I won't have one.
If we get popular, you are not allowed to get anything to plug. You just need to keep this gag going till we die.
I wouldn't know how to use it anyways.
They probably should have done this before because we got to plug Mike's shit.
I feel like I should know it already.
I know the numbers. It's 0219. I don't know if that's the right order, though. Quick shout out to our buddy Mike, who can't be here right now. He hasn't done a lot of streaming as of this recording, but check him out. Still on mboron0219.
Nice.
You can tweet at me at DMJoeThunder. You can email us at thetabletopteampodcast@gmail.com. Please send us your questions, comments, and topic suggestions, because good Lord, we need them. And we very rarely, but sometimes will stream on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/thetabletopteam. And I think that's everything. Welcome to the Tabletop Team.